Today in the Walt Disney Studios in Hollywood, there is coming into being something entirely new in entertainment. A motion picture called Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. The first full-length feature animated production in cinema history. For the past 2 years in the bustling studio buildings, home of Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and the Three Little Pigs, their creator, Walt Disney, and his staff of 600 artists have been working intensively on the first feature, which will be released in January. In his office, the guiding genius and active head of the organization, Walt Disney, takes time out for a word of greeting.
When Phil Reisman was here for the RKO convention, he visited our studios, and at the time he expressed the wish that all of you could see how these pictures were made. So we have hurriedly thrown together a little film that we hope will give you some idea of the methods involved and the great amount of work involved in the production of these pictures, in the hope that it might help you in the selling of the product.
Everyone has made his own movies by drawing figures in different positions on successive pages of a pad and flipping the leaves to make the figures move. This is the fundamental principle behind the making of animated motion pictures at the Walt Disney Studios today. First step in the complex process is to create an interesting story. Walt Disney stories originate in the studio story department in outline form. Sketchmen are then called in to make rough drawings illustrating the main action. These drawings, after much trial and error, are tacked up on storyboards in sequence, approximately 200 sketches constituting a complete story outline. The story then moves into a conference room where Walt Disney comes in to look it over. Not a story goes into production without his approval. For Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Walt is spending most of his time in spirited meetings where every detail of the action is discussed, acted out, and analyzed. When Walt finally okays the story, it goes along to the unit animation director, who blocks it out in detail. He then consults the unit musical director, and in a series of feverish meetings, the musical score is written, played, and approved. Here again, the visual aspect of the picture is kept constantly in mind. As the music takes form, the director acts out the story to make sure the rhythm of the music fits every action. Meanwhile, other artists are taking the original rough story sketches and elaborating them into layouts, detailed stage settings which, except for the fact that they do not move, give an exact picture in color of what the finished production will look like. Now, armed with his musical score and his layout drawings, the director sets his animators to work, the men who are actually going to breathe life and movement into the characters. Working with pencil at illuminated drawing boards so that they can look through the paper at the previous action they have drawn, these artists sketch in every movement and facial expression of the characters. Their work is purely creative. The lovable traits that have endeared the Disney characters to audiences the world over are put into them by the animators at this time. Although their work is highly imaginative, the animating artists do not rely too strongly on imagination. To capture a tricky movement or facial expression, they act it out before a mirror, which accounts for the remarkable fidelity to nature which their preliminary animated drawings reveal. When the first rough animation is completed, the pencil drawings go to the camera department, where they are photographed in sequence. The film then goes to the laboratory, where it is developed in negative form and then returned to the animator who studies it in his moviola. In this machine, the animator can run the pictures both backward and forward. The movements of the heroine of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs are studied with particular care, for Snow White is no caricature, but a sweet, natural young girl whose every gesture must be lifelike and graceful. Next, the rough film is run off in a studio projection room for the benefit of Walt Disney and all the men who have worked on the story from the beginning. As the action on the screen progresses, A stenographer records comments and suggestions. After 6 months in the case of shorts, 2 years in the case of the feature, all corrections and changes in the pencil drawings have been made, and the picture enters its final stage, that of color. In a comfortable building of their own, well lighted and air-conditioned throughout, 120 girls take the animator's pencil drawings and trace them in ink on sheets of celluloid, following exactly every line of the originals. In the studio paint laboratory, where every color is specially made up from secret formulas, the delicate shadings for the current production are compounded. In all, some 1,500 different shades and colors have been developed. In the painting department, more girls take the celluloids in hand, turning them over and applying the colors on the back. More than 15,000 celluloids must be hand-colored in this way for a single Disney short subject. Most of the charm of the Disney Technicolor productions lies in the beauty of their scenic backgrounds. These are painted in watercolor. Artists have been working for months on such backgrounds as that of the corner of the Seven Dwarfs cottage. Now comes the final stage in the production cycle. Background drawings and colored celluloids go to the master camera to be photographed in Technicolor. After the camera operator places a celluloid sheet on top of a background, he presses a foot pedal. A clamp comes down and holds the picture securely in place while the overhead camera exposes one frame of film. The celluloid is then changed and the process repeated. It takes 2 weeks to photograph a Mickey Mouse or Silly Symphony subject. 6 months are being allowed to complete the color photography of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which has more than 200,000 separate drawings. Once the color film is ready, it passes into the hands of technicians who do the final checking and assembling. The soundtrack is examined for dialogue, and a chart records the position of the words, which must be perfectly synchronized with the lip movements of the characters. Next, Walt Disney engages a symphony orchestra to record the completed musical score, and the musicians stand by ready while the sound engineers get to work on their noise-making machines.
That's where the duck gets sacked. We want a loud accent on the beginning of the measure. Let's have it again.
Okay, boys, stop.
Yeah.
Today, all the production facilities of the Disney organization are concentrated on the completion of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the studio's most ambitious project. Decision to make the feature was brought about originally by audience demand. Walt received innumerable letters complaining because the subjects were all too short. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is the answer to that demand, and in it, a blend of story, dialogue, song, comedy, and color is being created such as has never before been attempted. Walt Disney and his staff are so enthusiastic about the feature, so sure of its success, that they are working far into the night, certain that Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs will mark a milestone in the development of the motion picture